Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Yo antaha pravishya mama vacha imam prashuptam sanjeevayati akila shaktidhara swadamna anyam shtahasta charana shravanatvagadin प्राणान् नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यं लसतु श्रीमदानन्दतीर्थेन्दुर्नो हृदम्बरे यद्वचश्चन्द्रिका स्वान्तसन्तापं विनिकृन्तति पदवाक्यप्रमाणज्ञान् प्रणम्य शिरसा गुरून् व्याकरिष्ये यथाभूतं विष्णुतत्त्वविनिर्णयम्. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, folks, for joining in for the 12th session of Ishavasya Upanishad. We've been doing it for 4 months now. So where are we? Overall structure, let's think about the Rishi, Devata, and Chandas here. The Rishi, of course, is Svayambu, Manu, Dadichi, Yagnavalkya, Kanva Rishi, and all the acharyas that we have worshipped and celebrated over the centuries. The Devata here is Yagnanamaka Paramatma, who is Vishnu's incarnation himself. And the Chandas for Isha Upanishad, as you know, is Anushtup, Trishtup, and Jagati. All three Chandas are there in this Upanishad, and we have tried and highlighted where these various Chandas come in. Okay, so what have we done so far? We've looked at the nature of Brahman, we've looked at the upasanas of Brahman. Ishavasyam idang sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagatena tyaktena bunjitaha magradaha kasya sviddanam kuruvannevehya kuru karmani jijiji vishet shatang samaha yevam tvayi na anyato asti na karma lipyate nare asurya namate lokaha andena tamasa avrutaha tamscha pretya abhigachanti ekecha atmahano janaha अनेजदेकं मनसा जवीहो नैनद्धेवा आप्नुवन् पूर्वमर्षत् तद्दावतो अन्यान् अत्येति तिष्ठत् तस्मिन् अपो मातरिश्वा ददाति तत् एजति तन्नेजति तदु दूरे तदु अन्तिके तद् अन्तरस्य सर्वस्य तदु सर्वस्य बाह्यतः यस्तु सर्वाणि भूतानि आत्मन्येव अनुपश्यति सर्वभूतेषु च आत्मानं ततो न विजुगुप्सते यस्मिन् सर्वाणि भूतानि आत्मन्येव अभूद्विजानतः तत्र को मोहः कः शोकः एकत्वम् अनुपश्यतः सपर्यगात् अखायम् अव्रणम् अस्नाविरम् शुद्धम् अपापविद्धम् कबीर मनीषीः परिभूः स्वयंभूः याता तत्यतो अर्थान् व्यददात् शाश्वतिभ्यः समाभ्यः. So those are the 8 verses that we have done, and over the last 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, we have been thinking about this last verse, which is a very profound verse of Ishavasya Upanishad. Kabir Manishihi Paribuhu Swayambuhu Yata Tatyato Artan Vyadadat Shashwatibhyaha Samabhyaha. So once Swayambu Manu has kind of contemplated doing the upasana of Brahman, then he is also thinking about what would happen to me if I did upasana in the wrong perspective. I should not be doing upasana in the wrong perspective, and that applies to all of us as well. As I've told you before, this is our journey of souls, and it's very, very important that we have the right Google map here. We have the right sat-nav system that eventually takes us to our proper destination. So we need to be very careful when we put that postcode as to where we go, and that postcode really here is the correct understanding of who this Brahman is. What happens to those who have a wrong upasana of Brahman? So today we will try and tackle the first 2 verses in the 3rd Kanda of Ishavasya Upanishad. What does it say? Andantamaha pravishanti ye avidyayam upasate tato bhuya ivate tamo yavu vidyayam rataha. Anyadeva ahurur vidyaya, anyad ahur avidyaya, iti shushru madiranam yena tad vyachachakshire. Okay, yenas tad vichachakshire. So that is the verse that we are going to be looking at today, the first 2 verses. So before we do that, let's just very quickly recap what we have been doing for the past 2 weeks. So the upasanas of the Brahman and his created universe and the jivas who are going through samsara in this universe that he has created, there are various views on that. So one school of Vedanta describes Brahman as purely nirguna, no attributes, no actions, not a perceiver. All other forms of Brahman that are worshipped in the temples and the homes are actually Sabala Brahman and does not actually exist. It is a superimposition of avidya that leads to the appearance of the world. In the true sense of the term, it is actually not a creation. Vivarta is not a creation. Superimposition is not a creation. Now, there is another school in the other spectrum which thinks Paramatma is an abode of infinite auspicious attributes. He has no defects. There is no difference between Mula Rupa, Avatara Rupa, Vyuha, Antaryami Rupa, etc. In fact, the whole Shanti mantra of this Upanishad is Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Avashishyate. So that whole Shanti mantra is talking about this. Every form, Mula Rupa, Avatara Rupa, Vyuha, Antaryami Rupa of Brahman is Purna. And that this Brahman creates the real universe using the Mula Prakriti, which is under his control. Okay. And then it goes on to celebrate this Brahman is Sarvajna, he is Sarvashakta, he is Nitya Shuki, he is Swatantra. So those are the conflicting two spectrums of views on Brahman. Yeah. Then, of course, when it comes to jivas, one school says do not really exist. It is the upadhi, which is again a modification, which is again an ignorance, a maya, a sadasad vilakshana, a mithya concept that creates an apparent difference between Brahman and jiva. And that this apparent difference which creates this jiva, and this goes through a samsara. And ultimately, it is the Brahman that is going through the samsara because the upadhi primarily falls on Brahman. That is the first event, that the upadhi falls on Brahman and then the jivas come. Okay? Whereas there is another school which thinks, look guys, jivas are infinite, they're atomic, their constitutional position is they're always dependent on Brahman and they have 4 salient characteristics in contrast to Brahman. What is that? Agnyatva, Alpashaktitva, Dukkitva, and Swalpakartrita. This contrasts with the great attributes of Brahman. So that is the 2 different views about jivas. Then, of course, the matter and the created universe, there are differences of opinion. One school thinks this universe is all mithya, superimposition on Brahman. And that mithya, that anirvachaniya, that sadasad vilakshana is actually, we have seen that in previous verses, equates to asat. Then there is another school at the other end which thinks that the universe is real and that this real universe is created in eternal cycles of pravahato anadinitya, that it is constantly, as we all know in one of the basic tenets of Sanatana Dharma is universe, there is eternal creation of the universe. There was never a point universe was not created, nor there will be any point where the universe will cease to be created. And it is a constant modification that is going on, which the Shastras call as Pravahato Anadinitya. Okay, so those are all the contradicting views, 2 different spectrums that is out there for us to think about when we do this upasana of Brahman. So when Svayambu or Manu is saying, I am doing these upasanas, and then I need to be sure that I am not doing the wrong type of upasanas, we need to watch this very carefully. If we need to get into Svayambu or Manu's shoes, then we need to understand here that Svayambu or Manu is doing upasana to the Supreme to protect him and his Manvantara. So by natural implication, they actually have to exist. Or do they not have to exist? If they don't exist, then why bother doing all this contemplation? So we always need to think about this contextual relevance of the Upanishads that we study and contemplate. We just cannot pluck words here and there and then try and formulate our own philosophy here. The 2 primary dictum of understanding the Upanishads is, number 1, please look at the Prakarana. The Prakarana is primarily important for us to understand what is going on. And also, once you've seen the Prakarana, look at the overarching philosophy, and then compare with other texts, compare with Prasthanatrayas, compare with Gita Prasthana, and of course use the Sutra Prasthana, and then you use Puranas, Itihasas, and so on to try and bring the Samanvaya of the Shastras. And that is very, very important. Prakarana and Samanvaya, contextual relevance, and understanding that every aspect of the Shastras is only talking about the same ideas. And we need to just firm up these concepts when we do our own Upasana or our own Shravana and Manana. And when you look at Svayambu or Manus, I am quite clear in myself that he is actually praying to Paramatma, who is different from him, to protect him. And he is not only asking for his own protection, but he is also saying that please protect this Manvantara. And of course, this Manvantara is part of the created universe. And unless it is real, there is no point in protecting the universe. So those are all the key ideas that we just need to think about. And of course, we said last time, this democracy in philosophy is beautiful in Sanatana Dharma. And we looked at the various ideas, right, about Brahman, Jiva, and matter. We said one school, that is the Charvakas, are the materialist. They think Brahman and Jivas don't exist. It is only the matter that exists. So here, just to open you guys up, can I ask this a quick rapid quiz here? Who is the ancient philosopher? We could say he's a philosopher possibly, or in Mahabharata, who is supposed to have first started the Charvaka system of philosophy. Anybody wants to take this? Who started the Charvaka systems of philosophy in India? Any takers for this question? Okay, if not, Shakuni. Shakuni is considered as the one that started the Charvaka school. Okay, so check him out. Then, of course, you have some schools say Brahman alone exists, Jivas and Jadas don't exist, monistic Mayavada school. The other school thinks that other forms, these are Nastika schools that don't trust, that don't rely on the Vedas. They say Brahman don't exist, but Jiva exists and matter exists. And the Jiva's moksha is eternal travel. Once they get dissolved from samsara, they're just eternally flying. That is their moksha. That is the Arhata school or Jaina school that thinks that way. Then, of course, you have our Buddhist schools, which feel that Brahman, Chetana, and Jada actually don't have a static reality. It is all momentary and illusory. Okay. Then you have folks like Sa Ishvara Sankhya, not Nirishvara Sankhya, Sa Ishvara Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya, and Vaiseshika schemes of philosophies. They think, yes, these three fellows exist, but they have some kind of an independent existence. They are just there. Okay. Then our Visishtadvaita school says Jiva and Brahman is the Jiva and matter is the body of Brahman. Brahman is this like the soul of the universe and the Jivas and controls it. It's a beautiful concept. Then, of course, the Tattvavada says, look, all these three guys exist. They are different. They have a reality of their own. Whereas Brahman is the independent reality. All others are dependent on him is the Tattvavada. So those are all the various schools of democracies and philosophies that we have understood. So over the last 2 weeks, I've given you a lot of information. Now the big question is, if these are all the various ideas that they don't exist elsewhere, they actually exist within the Sanatana Dharma. Okay, they all exist within the various strands of Vedic philosophy. There are these kind of ideas that exist. And that is why we say the Sanatana Dharma is, the souls just find what appeals to them and make a direction on that. There is no setting the firm dictum that this is what you need to follow. You should not follow this. No, there is this democracy where each soul, as per its swabhava, follows a certain philosophy. Okay? So that is what I've tried to do over the last 2 to 3 classes, to give you the various strands of thought that runs in Vedic philosophy. But then Svayambu Manu, and as I said, we just need to watch what Svayambu Manu is telling to us here. Svayambu Manu is very clear. He is talking about in these sentences, the following verses. So these are new verses for this week. Andan tamaha pravishanti ye avidyayam upasate tato bhuya ivate tamo yavu vidyaya rataha. Okay, it's a very, very interesting, puzzling word. So first, to understand the whole verse, Andantamaha pravishanti ye avidyayam upasate tato bhuya ivate tamo yavu vidyaya rataha. So to understand what is it that Svayambu Manu is talking here, there are various bhashyas for this particular verse. So you can do your individual studies as to what this vidya is and what is avidya is. So what is avidya? What is vidya? It's a big problem of philosophy, whether you believe it or not. There are various approaches to what is vidya and what is avidya. So I've just made a table here to just give you a summary of what do the Vedic philosophers think about this. So vidya can mean yatartha jnana, or avidya means ayatartha jnana. So what is yatartha jnana? Yatartham pramanam. Okay, knowing an object as it really exists is yatartha jnana. Okay, that is the pramana. That is true knowledge. Whereas knowing something differently for ourselves, but actually the object is something else. But what we are getting the knowledge is something else. That is ayatartha jnana. Okay, so in English, you can possibly equate this to knowledge or ignorance. Vidya is knowledge, avidya is ignorance. Or you can consider vidya as true knowledge, whereas avidya is false knowledge. You can consider vidya as correct knowledge of God, avidya as incorrect knowledge of God. Okay? Or vidya can be higher knowledge. That is, anything that's got to do with the knowledge of God is higher knowledge. And anything that does not involve our contemplation of Paramatma is lower knowledge, which generally tends to be the material world. So avidya in that sense can be considered as the knowledge about the material world is avidya, whereas the knowledge of the Paramatma is vidya. But then that avidya is not mithya or sadasad vilakshana or anirvachaniya. It should not be confused with those terms. Here, what it means is alpa vidya. Avidya means alpa vidya. Alpa means inferior knowledge or lower knowledge. And this is higher knowledge. So if you remember Chandogya Upanishad chapter 6, Uddalaka said, Yena ashrutam shrutam bhavati amatam matam avijñatam vijñatam iti. When he asked that question, Shwetaketu was dumbstruck. He could not answer that question. He said, what is that knowledge? Knowing which means you know everything. That is higher knowledge. Okay? That is the knowledge as what in English you could call this as spiritual science, whereas avidya can be material science. So these are all the various ideas that should come to us, various definitions of vidya and avidya that should come to us when we approach this verse. So that is the first point here, saying that vidya and avidya there is not a colloquial literal sense. It's got very deep philosophical connotations. Vidya, let's revise this again, very important. Vidya means what? Yatartha jnana, knowledge, true knowledge. True knowledge of God, the higher knowledge, which is the knowledge of God, which is spiritual science. That is vidya. Whereas avidya is ayatartha jnana, or ignorance, or false knowledge, or incorrect knowledge of God, or inferior knowledge, i.e. just focused on just doing science and understanding how the material world works. That is still knowledge, but that is inferior knowledge or the material science. So those are all the meanings of vidya and avidya. And of course, there are other schools that also bring in the concept as vidya means jnana, whereas avidya means karma. Anything that is not vidya is karma, and any action done in ignorance is avidya. So that is also another accepted view of what vidya and avidya is. And of course, what we need to do here is we need to think about the contextual relevance, right? It is all about prakarana, what is going on here. Here, our Svayambu Manu is doing upasana of Brahman. Okay, so in this context, the last three become very, very important. Correct knowledge of God, higher knowledge and spiritual science, incorrect knowledge of God, inferior knowledge and material science. Okay, so that is about vidya and avidya. Then, of course, in this verse, if you look about it, look here very carefully. Tamas is used twice. Andan tamaha pravishanti ye avidyayam upasate tato bhuya ivate tamo. So, andan tamaha and tamaha. So, twice in first line, anda tamas is used. Second line also, tamas is used. Okay, and that is not surprising, because in the third verse, in the sixth verse, what has happened here? Our Svayambu Manu has already given a bit of a hint as to what he is going to be dealing with next. Asurya namate lokaha andena tamasa avrutaha tamste pretya abhigachanti yekecha atma hano janaha. So we've spent, I think, a couple of weeks talking about this verse. Who is Asurya? What is the Andatamaha? And who are the Atma Hano Janahas? How can you kill the Atman? How can you kill the Supreme Lord? There are various ways of killing Supreme Lord, whether you believe it or not. There are various ways of killing. One saying that he is an absolute zero. The other one saying that he's got limited qualities. Or the third one is to say he and his avatara rupas are different. Or the fourth and the most important is saying, I am that Supreme Paramatma. Okay, so they are all equivalent to Atma Hano Janaha. And Svayambu Manu says, those fellows will go to Andatamas. Andena Tamasa Avruta. So there we understood who is this Asurya. We did the etymology there. A plus Su plus Ra plus Ya. Su means Sreshta. Ra means Ramana. He who has Ananda is Surya. He who does not have Ananda is Asurya. He who has Dukkha is Asurya. And he goes to the place which is full of Dukkhas. Asurya namate lokaha. Nama nishtitam yetad iti artaha. Raghavendra Tirtha gives us a definition there, what nama there means. Nishchitam yetad iti artaha. Definitely he is going to go to that place where there is so much suffering. So they are fried in various things. Garuda Purana, as you know, Bhagavatam, they all talk about this. A place covered by ignorance, andantamaha, eternal hells. Okay. Of course, even this concept of eternal hells is very interesting. Some schools of Vedanta don't think that there is no hell. Everybody will become Nirguna Brahman. Okay, that is one view. There is another view, another school of Vedanta which thinks then everybody is entitled for moksha, and in moksha they have the same intensity and quantity of Ananda as Brahman. And then there is another school which thinks, look, each jiva based on its swabhava has a particular destination. The Sattvikas who do satsang and do shravana, manana, dhyana, nitidhyasa, shakshatkara, etc. will eventually go to moksha. The folks like you and me who are charvakas, who are constantly thinking about material things and we are stuck in samsara. So these fellows are nitya samsarians. And then there are the worst of jivas like Duryodhana, Kalanemi, and so many of these jivas that are described in Puranas and in your Shastras. These fellows all go to Andatamas. Okay. So here we have done, I had to just remind you about Katha Upanishad to understand when do they go to moksha, nitya samsarin and andatamas. Okay, let's open this up for discussion. Who wants to tell us here and remind us, eventually, how do the souls make their destination to moksha or andatamas? What is the journey that we have understood from previous classes? Anybody wants to contribute here? How does that sequence happens? No worries, I'll take this one. So the way this happens, we all know, is we are all there in Brahman's womb all the time. And when Srishti happens, we all come into existence. And when we come into existence, what is going on here? In the womb, most jivas always have the linga sharira that are stuck with them. And with the linga sharira, then they acquire the stula sharira and they go through samsara. Okay, and then once they work out their karmas, they worked out their sadhanas. For sattvikas, the sadhanas is what they have with God. They get the God's grace, and with the God's grace, they're able to eradicate all the karmas. Then they go to Satyaloka and be with Chaturmukha Brahma. And when the Chaturmukha Brahma's innings comes to an end, when he has completed his 100 years, then the Mahapralaya happens. In the Mahapralaya, what happens? All the jivas then go back to the Brahman's womb. And then there is this Mahapralaya period phase. And then another Srishti comes along. And when another Srishti comes along, three things happens. Some jivas cross the Viraja Nadi and they go to moksha. Some jivas come back to the material world and that becomes nitya samsaras. And then some jivas go to andhatamas. So in that sense, liberation for sattvika jivas is their moksha, swarupa ananda, whereas the liberation of the most tamasic of jivas is their swarupa dukkha, where they are in eternal health, suffering eternally. Okay, so those are the views, and this view is very similar to Catholicism. You would find it interesting. The theistic schools of Vedanta, some concepts of theistic schools of Vedanta is very similar to Catholicism, or rather the other way around. But so I just wanted to give you this framework in which this is happening. So this is the andhatamas that Svayambu Manu is talking about. So I had to give you this background to remind you what is it Svayambu Manu is saying. He's saying andantamaha pravishanti. Pravishanti means what? They go. Who? Those avidyayam upasate. Those that follow the path of ignorance, they go to andhatamas. Okay? That is what the next verse is. Andantamaha pravishanti ye avidyayam upasate. So we understand andantama pravishanti, I've told you in the previous verse. Avidyayam upasate. What is that place, that andhatamas place? Covered by ignorance. Okay. At this point, it's always useful to think about what do other Upanishads says, and most importantly, what the Gita is saying. So I'm going to get one of you to think about Gita 16, 19, and 20 whilst I do the verse in the Mundaka Upanishad. So this one we have done it, right? It also comes in Katha Upanishad. Avidyayam antare vartamanaha swayam dhiraha panditam manyamanaha janganyamanaha pariyanti mudaha ndeneva niyamayata andaha. So this is our position. We are all following some blind leader who himself is ignorant, and we are all following in the deep pit. So we need to really watch what is that ignorance that we should avoid. Yeah. So who wants to take up Gita 16, 19, and 20, please? Can I pick one? Neetaji, do you want to go if you're there?
Okay. Tanaham dvishata kruran samsareshu naradhaman kshipamya shubha suri kshipamya samashubhan asurishveva yonishu asurim yonimapanna mudha janmani mama prapyaiva kaunteya tato yantyadhamam gatim.
Thank you, Neetaji. So yeah, Nara Adaman. Nara Adaman means the lowest. And then what happens to them? Mam aprapya. They don't attain me. But what do they happen? Yanti adamam gatim. They go to the lowest forms of existence. Yeah, Krishna is very, very clear there. The lowest forms of existence is what Svayambu Manu is talking about here. Andantamaha pravishanti. Okay. So that avidya, in the first approach, there are various approaches to this verse that we are going to complete today. So that avidya there is ayatartha jnana, ignorance, false knowledge, and most importantly, incorrect knowledge of God. Whether we like it or not, philosophy is a bitter pill. Yeah. And that bitter pill is telling us that if you have an incorrect knowledge of God, your destination is going to be andantamaha. It's not me, it is not somebody else. It is the Upanishads that are telling us very clearly. So we just need to watch all this. Okay. So here I put the idea of Katha Upanishad, Shreyas and Preyas. So I really want one of us to contribute here from what we have understood about what Shreyas means and what Preyas means. So who wants to remind us here? Shreyas and Preyas from Katha Upanishad. Okay, a bit of a dead silence. So you're still.
Prayers is what is good for us, and prayers is what is pleasant. It looks pleasant, but at the end, it doesn't do good.
Thank you, Pratibhaji. Wonderful. So as I said, philosophy is like a bitter pill. So what feels very bitter now actually will give you long-lasting cure and happiness. Whereas what you think is very pleasant now may not. Thank you, Pratibhaji. Wonderful. So that is what literally what prayas and shreyas is. Prayas, majority of us choose this path. What is the easy way out? Whereas only one or two, like all the acharyas that we have had over the last thousands of years, they have chosen the difficult path and then they have been leaders. They are the Shreyas. So who are the ones that follow Shreyas? The ones that have knowledge, true knowledge, Vidya. Whereas the ones that have Avidya follow prayers. Yeah. The ones that have incorrect knowledge of God, a false knowledge, ignorance, ayatartha jnana, those are the ones that follow the path of prayers, and we all know what happens to them. Anyad shreyo, anyad uta eva preyaha, te ube nana arte purusham siditaha, tayoho shreyaha adadanasya sadhu bhavati, hiyate tu artad yavu preyo vrunite. Yadeva tad mutra tad amutra tad anbiha. So that verse also we have done. Those that have the wrong, this is very important. And again, Katha Upanishad is telling us very, very clearly that incorrect knowledge of God. The ones that have the incorrect knowledge of God, what happens to them? Yata udakam durge vrishtam parvateshu vidavati yevam dharman prutak pashyan taneva anu vidavati. Okay, very, very clear statements. That fellow who has a wrong concept of God, all the wrong concepts that I've just described a few minutes ago, what happens to them? He falls down very rapidly, just like how the water gushes down after a rain, heavy rain. In the top of the mountain, the water gushes down to the bottom. Similarly, that jiva that has this incorrect knowledge will fall down to the andhatamas. So that is what Svayambu Manu is saying. That is exactly what Katha Upanishad is also saying. Here is the next verse that is very, very puzzling. And I'll tell you what exactly it means. So the first line we can all understand, right? Those who have the wrong knowledge of God, those who have wrong knowledge or running their lives in ignorance, these fellows have no good salvation. They are finished. That we understand from the first line. But here is the second line that is even more cryptic and puzzling. And it says, Swayambhu Manu is saying, Tato bhuya yivate tamo yavu vidyayam rataha. Tataha. Than that means than the first line, than the ignorant. Bhuyaha means greater. Yeah, even undoubtedly. They,
greater than God.
tamas, darkness. Ye, who? You, but vidyayam, knowledge, rataha, devoted or delighted in. Okay? Saying those who are in knowledge, they also go to the deepest of hells. Okay, so this is very cryptic and puzzling. What is it that Swayambhu Manu is saying here? It is a bit shocking, right? So we are all very busy getting knowledge. And here Swayambhu Manu is saying, if you are following the path of knowledge, you will go to even deeper hells. Why? If you are following the path of knowledge, not in the right perspective, in the right way, if you're not doing it, then you will also go to the deepest of hells. That is what Swayambhu Manu is saying. So what does that actually mean? Okay. So one of the things I just wanted to remind you is when we were doing Ishavasya Upanishad, we've always thought about Puranas, right? First initial phases, we spoke about Bhagavata Purana. Then for the subsequent workers, we were looking at Varaha Purana for evidence. And in the current verse, Acharya takes up Kurma Purana and then tells us the evidence for what this line actually means actually comes from Kurma Purana. So hold on to that idea. I'll come to that a little bit later. Okay. So here what is happening? Why are those that follow the path of knowledge are also doomed for the deepest of hells? They are if you have blind faith. you're just superstitious, some fellow is saying this is the truth. And what you have done, you have accepted that as a blind faith, and you are just going on and doing what that fellow has told you is the truth. That blind faith and superstition, Svayambu Manu has categorically said, is going to lead us to deep hells. Blind followers of dogmas. Some fellow says this is what is the truth, and the rest of them go follow this blindly. Blind following of dogma has been censured very clearly in the Upanishad. Lack of deeper contemplation. So that is the third problem for most of us. We just accept if some fellow who has got a long beard says something in modern times, we take that as gospel and we follow our lives. We are just incapable of making our own deep understanding and contemplation. We are very good in doing that in our professional lives, but somehow we are not doing that for our philosophical lives. Yeah, this is our problem, not the Shastra's problem. So what Svayambu Manu is actually saying here really is, he is actually telling us that if you are just blindly reading something and you're not thinking about it, i.e., you're listening, but no manana or dhyana, no firmed up knowledge. Okay? That is hugely problematic from the Upanishad seers. The Rishis have a big problem with that. You have to challenge every idea. You have to ask the difficult question. Krishna has said that already. Go to a guru, but challenge him and ask all the difficult question and do firm up your knowledge. And if we don't do that and we just accept some fellow saying something as the truth, we are doomed, is what Svayambu Manu is saying. The second approach to this verse, Tato bhuya ivate tamo yavu vidyayam rataha, this is the meaning there. The ones that keep knowledge to themselves and do not teach or pass this on to deserving souls are also doomed for deepest of hells. Okay, this is something that we need to be very, very mindful of. It is just not good enough that we study and learn, do manana, and maybe some of us do dhyana and so on, and keep things to ourselves. If we do that, rather than sharing the knowledge and getting others, deserving souls also to access that knowledge and make their own spiritual progress, i.e., if we have a selfish motive towards this path, Svayambu Manu says, you are doomed, mate. You are going to go to the deepest of hells, even deeper than the one that follows ignorance. Okay? So this is again a very, 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 very important idea. And that is the reason why if this particular, I haven't put which Upanishad, but let me read this and I'll maybe we'll do a quiz as to which Upanishad this is. Ritam cha swadhyaya pravachanecha, satyam cha swadhyaya pravachanecha, tapascha swadhyaya pravachanecha, dhamascha swadhyaya pravachanecha, shamascha swadhyaya pravachanecha, agnayascha swadhyaya pravachanecha, agnihotram cha swadhyaya pravachanecha, atithiyascha swadhyaya pravachanecha, manusham cha swadhyaya pravachanecha, praja cha swadhyaya pravachanecha, prajanyascha swadhyaya pravachanecha, prajatishcha swadhyaya pravachanecha. So many times this Rishi has said swadhyaya. Swadhyaya means what? Swa means Swatantra Paramatma. Swa also means our own self-study. Self-study of the Swatantra is Swadhyaya. Pravachana means what? What you have read, you distribute that knowledge to others. Swadhyaya Pravachanecha. So this Rishi is giving these instructions to the students. This is what you need to do when you study Vedas and when you study Upanishads. Do not keep the knowledge to yourself. Pass on the knowledge to the deserving souls. If you don't do that, and if you have a selfish approach to this, you are finished, mate. You are going to the deepest of hells, much deeper than those that follow ignorance. That is what Svayambu Manu is censuring us. So who is going to tell us which Upanishad have I recited this verse from? Any takers? We have done this before.
Shikshavalli, Taittiriya Upanishad.
Beautiful answer, Jagadish ji. Perfect answer. Sikshavali. When the students have done their Gurukula and they have studied Veda Adhyayana for 12 years, and there is a send-off that is going on, there is a send-off party that happens in the Gurukula. At that point, the students want to do some Guru Dakshina, right? At that time, the Rishi is saying these profound verses. He says, your best Guru Dakshina to me will be that whatever knowledge that I have taught you, you teach this to others. Swadhyaya and Pravachana. Okay, so we should never forget this. This is what Svayambu Manu is saying here. Tato bhuya ivate tamo yavu vidyayamrataha. So we need to watch this. The third approach to this is the ones that have knowledge, but do not censure those that have wrong knowledge. Okay. So what does that mean? Kurma Purana comes to our rescue here, and Acharya cites this here. Anyad upasakaha yetu tamo andam yanti asamshayam. Tato adhikam iva vyaktam yanti tesham anindakaha. Okay, so those that do not censure the wrong knowledge. So Kurma Purana actually is the elaboration of this mantra here. What it is actually telling us is, it is all well and good that we have done our Shravana, Manana, and then we have firmed up the knowledge and we know that this is the right knowledge. That is all well and good. But Swayambhu Manu's view also is that it is also our responsibility to point out when somebody has a wrong knowledge. Okay. If you don't censure those that have wrong knowledge, you are in trouble, because it is your duty to actually tell them what is the right knowledge here. They may not agree with you, but still it is your duty to explain to them what is the wrong knowledge. Okay. Think about this. Are we doing this in our day-to-day life? We all say, Sanatana Dharma is very democratic, etc., etc. That is all well and good. And hundreds of years ago, we used to have all the polemics and debates to understand what is the truth. That was all going on. Why? Exactly for this. And that is the main reason. And I very briefly told you last time that Veda Vyasa, exactly for that reason, when he drafted the Brahma Sutra, he put the Pratama Adhyaya, Samanvaya Adhyaya, establishing the greatness of Brahman. And then Dvitiya Adhyaya is called Avirodha Adhyaya. Avirodha Adhyaya is censuring those that have wrong knowledge. Okay, so that is the main purpose of Avirodha Adhyaya. And I told you also about the second pada, which is Samaya Pada, that takes up various philosophies and says, what are the pros and cons of this? Okay, that censuring is also part of our spiritual progression. So this verse, I hope you're able to capture those ideas there. When Swayambhu Manu says, Tato bhuya ivate tamo yavu vidyayam rataha, we need to be thinking about three ideas here. Avoid blind faith. Do not follow somebody because that fellow you think is good. You need to do your own deeper contemplation. Okay. And once you have done the deeper contemplation and you have firmed up knowledge, ensure that you pass on those knowledge to the deserving selves. And when you have those kind of philosophical discussions, always go to Purva Paksha and then establish the Siddhanta. Okay, so this is what this one is saying. Censuring wrong knowledge is Purva Paksha. What is the right knowledge is called Siddhanta. So this is the basic approach of philosophical thinking in Sanatana Dharma or in Vedic philosophy, where you always say what is the Purva Paksha, and then you establish what is the Siddhanta. In fact, Veda Vyasa does this throughout the Brahma Sutra. He takes a Purva Paksha and then he establishes Siddhanta. And that is exactly what we should be doing, says Swayambhu Manu. So the attention please really is, we need to know what is comprehensive true knowledge. So to have comprehensive true knowledge, we need to know what is true knowledge, but at the same time, we need to know why false knowledge is false knowledge. That is also true knowledge. Okay. So we need to know why a certain concepts are false. And having the current approach as to why something is false knowledge is also true knowledge. Okay, so there are two sides to this coin. That is what Svayambu or Manu is describing to us in this verse. So such contemplation is necessary. Okay, you might ask, do I really need to invest so much time in all this? Why can't I just be, take this approach one, which has been shunned by Svayambu or Manu? But we could say, look, I don't want to get into all these controversies. I just want to carry on doing what I want to do. Why is that such contemplation necessary? Yeah. This is where the approach number 4 comes to answer this question. Andantamaha pravishanti ye avidyayam upasate tato bhuya ivate tabo yavu vidyayarataha, where the idea, the meaning of vidya and avidya opens up into an entirely different concept. Okay? This is the beauty of understanding the deeper philosophies in the Isha Upanishad that we learn from our acharyas as to how they have looked at these verses, rather than just skimming this superficially and just skipping the verses. No, we need to just take this opportunity to think about this much more of a fundamental problem that Svayambu Manu is talking about. So I told you at the beginning of this session that Vidya can also mean higher knowledge, which is knowledge of God or spiritual science, which is called Paravidya. Avidya can mean lower knowledge or the material world, material science or Aparavidya. Okay? So this Paravidya and Aparavidya is actually Vidya and Avidya. That is the 4th approach. Okay? How do we come to this equation? Mundaka Upanishad talks about this. Tasmai sahovacha dve vidye veditavye itihasmayad brahma vido vadanti. Para cha eva apara cha. Okay. So he says the knowledgeables know that there are 2 types of knowledge, Paravidya and Aparavidya. So then the Rishi goes and defines what is Aparavidya, which is very interesting. What is Apara? Tatra Apara. Rigvedo, Yajur Vedaha, Samavedo, Atharva Vedaha, Siksha, Kalpo, Vyakaranam, Niruktam, Chendo, Jyotishamiti. Atapara, Yaya, Tad, Aksharam, Adigamyate. Beautiful definition. So this might be a little bit scary stuff, but I'll go through this. So basically what the Rishi has said is, Aparavidya, lower knowledge. What is lower knowledge? You can get lower knowledge from all the 4 Vedas. Siksha, Kalpo, Vyakaranam, Niruktam, Chanda, Jyotisham, the Veda Angas. The 4 Vedas and the Veda Angas together can give you Aparavidya. But at the same time, they can also give you Paravidya when the understanding there is Atha Para Yaya Tad Aksharam Adigamyate. Okay, so who is going to remind us as to who Akshara is? As per Vedic philosophy, as per Gita, who is Akshara? Not Kutastha Akshara, but Akshara. Who is Akshara? Who is going to answer that question briefly?
He is the
Lakshmi.
Purushottama.
Beautiful, Pratibhaji. Anybody else? I thought somebody else also had the answer. Neetaji.
Brahman.
Brahman, beautiful. So Akshara, Brahman, Vishnu, they're all the same. Purushottama, they're all the same. So having the knowledge of Purushottama is Paravidya. Having knowledge other than Purushottama is called Aparavidya. And how can you get this knowledge? From the Vedas. So what does that mean? Vidya is Paravidya. Avidya, how do you split avidya? A plus vidya. A is alpa. Alpa plus vidya is alpa vidya is avidya. Look at it from another angle. Para is vara. Vara means sreshta or the highest. Para is, that is another literal meaning is, para is the highest or the sreshta. That is vara. Avara means lower. That's why we call avatara, right? Why do we say avatara? It comes down. God from his abode comes down to Bhuloka. That is why it's called avatara. Similarly, vara means higher. Avara means lower. So Paravidya means higher knowledge. Aparavidya or Avaravidya or Avidya or Alpavidya means lower knowledge. Okay, so that is how you approach this problem. So what is Paravidya and Aparavidya? We got about 15 minutes to go through this. I'm doing good this session. Tatra apara rigvedo yajurvedaha samavedo atharvavedaha siksha kalpo vyakaranam niruktam chando jyotishamiti atapara yaya tad aksharam adigamyate. So who is going to remind us as to what is the avatar of Vedavyasa? How does it happen and what is his role? So this is described, as you know, as Skanda Purana, but can folks remind us, because we have done this on so many occasions. Anybody wants to take this? What was the role of Vedavyasa when he was here in the Dwapara Kala time? What did he do?
He organized all the Vedas for the rest of the knowledge for us for Kala Yuga.
Beautiful, Devaji. Very good. Anybody else? What else did he do after saving all the Vedas? What else did he do? Anybody wants to say that?
He wrote all the Puranas.
And the Brahma Sutra.
Brilliant, Devalji. You got all of us got the answer. Narayanad vinishpannam jnanam krutayuge sthitam kinchid dat anyata jatam tretayam dwapare akilam gautamasya rishehe shapat jnane to ajnanatam gatehe sankirna buddhayo devaha brahma rudra purassaraha sharanam sharanyam jagmuhu narayanam anamayanam Tair Vignapita Karyastu Bhagavan Purushottamaha Avatirno Mahayogi Satyavatyam Parasharad Utsannan Bhagavan Veda Unjahara Harihi Swayam Chaturda Vyabhajat Tamshta Chaturvimsha Shitada Punaha Shatada Cha Ekada Chaiva Tataiva Cha Sahasrada Krishno Dvadashada Cha Eva Punastasyartha Vittaye. As Devalji said, much of the Vedas were lost at the end of Dwapara Yuga. And Brahma, Rudra, Purassaraha, Chaturmukha Brahma, Rudra, Indra, etc. They go to Narayana and says, please, this Buloka is really getting, it's getting messed up. Can you come and sort it out? Vedas are are losing their importance. People are giving all sorts of nonsensical interpretations. They are shunning the Vedas. Do something, Narayana. So Narayana then takes avatara whom? Parasara and Satyavati. Avatirno Mahayogi Satyavatyam Parasharati. He appears in these two. And then what does he do? He compiles all the Vedas. That is what here, Chaturda Vyabhajat, he compiles Rig, Yajur, Sama, Atharva, 24, 86, 15, 1012 shakas, distributes to all these folks, Paila, Vaishampayana, Jaimini, Shumantu, etc. Okay, to save the Brahma Sutra, to save the Vedas. Then what he did, as Devalji said, Chakara Brahma Sutrani Yesham Sutratva Manjasa Alpaksharam Asandiktam Saravat Vishwato Mukam Astobhyam Anavadyam Cha Sutram Sutra Vido Viduhu. So this Vedanta Sutra becomes a very, very important text. If we do not read or apply the rules of Vedanta Sutra and then just go and make our own meanings of Vedas, we are doomed. That becomes avidya, no hope. We have to use Vedanta Sutra to understand, because that is what Vedavyasa has done for our benefit, not for his benefit. He is Paramatma himself. He has done Vedanta Sutra for our benefit. So that Vedanta Sutra is called Nirnayaka Shastra. Shabda Jatasya Sarvasya Yat Pramanashta Nirnayaha. Okay. So that becomes very important. So who wants to take up Gita 15:15 and Gita 13:5? Gita 15:15. Beautiful verses. Maybe one of you can do both. Who wants to do that?
Shall I, Mataji?
Yeah. Oh, Shilaji, go for it.
Vedaishcha sarvair ahameva vedyo vedantakrit veda videva chaham. Rushibir bahuda gitam chandobihir vividhai pratak brahma sutra padaischaiva hetu madvir vinishyate. विनिश्चितैः.
Thank you very much, Shilaji. So in both these verses, 15:15 and 13:5, Krishna has very clearly said that the importance of Brahma Sutra. And he has also said Vedanta Krit. Vedanta means Vedanta Sutra. Yeah. Vedanta Krit. I have composed the Vedanta Krit. Who is me? Krishna Dvaipayana is also an avatar of Vishnu. Krishna is also an avatar of Vishnu. So that is why he's saying Vedanta Krit. I composed the Vedanta Krit. Okay. Why am I saying all this? Because these Vedas understood with Brahma Sutra and rules of interpretation as primarily denoting Brahman is Paravidya. Full stop. There is no other definition of what is Paravidya. Understanding the essence of the Vedas based on the Brahma Sutras and the Tatparya Lingas and so on, that is all there in the Shastras, and understanding that they primarily denote Brahman. Okay. Whereas Aparavidya is understood as denoting other things apart from Brahman. That is, if the Vedas, if we think that the Vedas denote something else, yeah, not Brahman, yes, that becomes Aparavidya. But when you use the same Vedas with interpretations from Brahma Sutra, then you understand that it is only talking about Brahman. So the same body of text can have two things. It all depends upon our approach. It's how we see it. It has nothing to do with the Vedas. Vedas are Vedas, that is it. It is how we approach it. If we use Brahma Sutra, we see it as Paravidya. If we don't use Brahma Sutra and make our own imagination of what it says, then it becomes Aparavidya. So again, the reason why this is all relevant for current discussion is this avidya and vidya needs to be seen from this perspective, primarily when you're looking at philosophical contemplation. Because again, there are different views as to this Veda. Of course, we say Veda is infinite, right? But we also know that there are 20,416 verses that are currently available for our philosophical contemplation. Even those 20,000 plus verses, we have got different views here in Sanatana Dharma. Some folks think that majority of the Vedas is Karma Kanda. Only a small portion of this called the Upanishad is Jnana Kanda. And there are some folks we think that majority of only 4 or 5 verses are Tattva Vedaka or truth declaring, whereas infinity minus 5 verses or so are all Atattva Vedaka or not truth declaring. And then there are other schools which says every sound, every word, every letter of the Vedas only celebrate the glory of Paramatma, and all of the Vedas only celebrate the glory of Paramatma. What we call Sarva Shabda Samanvaya or Sarva Shabda Vachyatva. So these are all some of the views. Do we have anybody wants to contribute here regarding Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda? Do we think that is the right approach, or it is our problem that we have not understood Vedas properly? Anybody wants to contribute here? No worries. Yeah, Suresh, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, if we believe that, I mean, differentiating or classifying it as Karma Kanda or Jnana Kanda is just from the verse that you just told us. Which is, it's the same text which is going to give us Paravidya and Aparavidya. It's our ability to grasp. If we want to classify it and, want to take selective portions of it, I think it's our problem. It's not the problem with the Shastras. If we can do Samanvaya and if we are able to extract the same information, we need to, because the text can't be giving us different messages. So if we perhaps approach with that in mind, and if we are able to find a solution which cuts across everything, that perhaps is the right knowledge, is how I would understand them.
Thank you, Sureshji. Very well put. And Sheila ji very nicely recited this verse, right? Vedaishta sarvair ahameva vedyaha. Very, very clear. Krishna said, all of the Vedas only celebrate me. Vedaishta sarvaihi ahameva. The whole of the Vedas celebrate only me. Yeah? How can we forget this 15 verse and then separate things into Karma Kanda, Jnana Kanda, Tattva Vedaka, Atattva Vedaka? So ask certain philosophers. If we truly take Krishna's view here, they will go for it.
I was thinking more in slightly different way. So could it be, I mean, it's a question mark, That so in learning theories, you have some people who are visual learners, some people who have auditory learners. And to me, karma kanda and jnana kanda is something like that. So some people are more into doing things and rituals and how that is done, whereas some people are more into the what is the tattva, what is the essence of what is it being going, is trying to say, or what is the knowledge that is going to say. I may be wrong, but that is how I look at it.
Yeah, thank you, Devalji. Beautiful, because I've got the next slide that that essentially picks up what you have just said. So thank you very much for giving a prelude to that. So yeah, so here you see Veda ishta sarve rahame vedya. What Katha Upanishad said, beautiful verse we have done is sarve vedaha yat padam amananti tapamsi cha sarvani yad vadanti yadichanto brahmacharyam charanti tatte padam sangrahena bravimi om ityetat. This beautiful, the very first verse where Yama talks about the third boon that Nachiketa asked for, he talks about this. Sarve Vedaha Yat Padam Amananti. The whole of the Vedas only talk about it. Okay? And that is why Veda Vyasa puts a sutra called Gati Samanya. If we say only one portion of the Vedas are truth declaring, whereas the rest of the Vedas are not truth declaring, then the problem there is, who said only that portion is truth declaring? Some other fellow will say, no, that portion is non-truth declaring, whereas some other verse is truth declaring, and you will never be able to settle the authoritativeness of Veda. And Veda Vyasa, using that argument, he says, Gati Samanya. Everywhere the Gati is the same, which means that the whole of the Vedas only talk about the Paramatma. Here is a very beautiful verse on Maha-Aitareya Upanishad. Tava etaha sarvaha richaha sarve vedaha sarve goshaga ekaiva vyahritihi prana eva prana richa iti eva vidya. Every sound, letter and the words, even the sound of the ocean, the chirping of the birds, any sound that is there in the universe, the Aitareya Upanishad says only celebrates the greatness of Paramatma. Okay. So this Veda Vyasa's view there is through this Gati Samanya, he establishes Sarva Sabja Samanvaya and Sarva Shabda Vachyatva, which is what many acharyas have done, like Madhvacharya, Jayatirtha, Vyasatirtha, Raghavendra Tirtha. I've just taken some examples, and I want to highlight Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Okay, as one of the exemplar examples of Sarva Shabda Vachyatva of Paramatma, of Krishna or Vishnu, Sarva Shabda Vachyatva. Chaitanya was a Vyakarana Pandit. Okay, he was a grammarian. He was very good in Vyakarana when he was on earth. Chaitanya was a very good Vyakarana Pandit, and through his scholarship and his greatness, what he realized was every sound that he's seeing in the Vedas is only talking about Krishna. Every sound, every letter, every sentence, he realized that it was talking only about Krishna. So what happened is, and if you read the Chaitanya Charitamrita, for example, you will be able to appreciate those things about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he was a true assimilator of Sarva Shabda Vachyatva of Brahman. And when he realized that, he stopped teaching Vyakarana. He said, I can't do this. I'm not able to teach Vyakarana because every word that I'm seeing only Krishna in that. So how am I going to teach this ordinary folk the grammar? So that is, I just wanted to illustrate an example of Chaitanya as how he was looking at Vedas. Okay. So here is Deval's question before we wind up today. As she said, but some fellows are ritualists. They like to do rituals. Okay. There are some fellows probably like to read. So, or the fellows who do just the rituals are Aparavidya, and or they are doing the Vidya, and fellows like others who are doing the Shastra Abhyasa, looking at Prasthanatrayas, Itihasa, Purana, etc. Are we doing Paravidya or not? Okay. So let's take this up because we've just done this, isn't it? Sarva Shabda Samanvaya, and we spoke about how Chaitanya, Raghavendra Tirtha, Vyasa Tirtha, Jayatirtha, Madhva, and so on and so forth have approached the Vedas in this perspective. Look at the very first verse of Yajur Veda and how does it finishes? Yajamanasya Pashun Pahi. So that verse, the very first verse of Yajur Veda Samhita finishes off with Yajamanasya Pashun Pahi. So Yajur Veda, as you know, is a fire sacrifice. Throw stuff, sit around, throw stuff. Yeah. And that line says, this Yajamana who is there, give him, protect his cows. Yajamanasya Pashun. Pashun means what? Cows. Pahi, Panti, protect. That is what the priest will be saying. So we think. Okay. And there are also other portions of the Vedas that talk about Prajaya, Pashubir, Yashasa, Brahmavarchasena. These are all the mantras that come. Prajaya, Prajaya means children. Pashubir means cows. Yashas means fame. Brahmavarchasena means make them look beautiful. You know, when you have knowledge, you have this aura that comes around you, isn't it? Make them like that because they are doing all these yagnas and rituals. Do we just take this in the literal sense? If you take it in the literal sense, it becomes aparavidya. Is this what the Vedas are telling us? That you do throw fire, mate, go to Havan, sit around, don't have a clue what is going on, just throw stuff in, and then you feel good about it that you have done something? This is what the Purva Mimamsakas used to do. Pure ritualism. Throw stuff and think that I'll go to Swarga, I'll enjoy some time and again come down. Okay. This is what the Purva Mimamsakas were doing. And one of the greatest contribution of Shankaracharya is that. Okay. For those of us who are not familiar from a historical perspective, what are all the contributions of all the acharyas that we have had? Shankaracharya's contribution is that one is, of course, bringing the folks into the Vedic fold. When the Tathagata Mata was all pervasive. And also, those that were following the Vedas were constantly fixated on doing rituals, throwing stuff, throwing this, get some dakshina, throw this, throw that, do this sacrifice, that sacrifice. You did this 6 sacrifice, you will get children. You do that sacrifice, you will get a house. All that kind of stuff that was going on, what was prescribed by Purva Mimamsa. Shankaracharya saw that and said, what nonsense. You are just being ritualistic. That is not the spirit of the Vedas. And bring knowledge back into the Vedas. So that is one of the greatest contribution of Shankaracharya in our history of Sanatana Dharma. And I just want to remind you guys about that. Coming back to this, Yajamanasya Pashun Pahi, Prajaya Pashubir Yashasa Brahmavarchasena. So if you were Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or if you were Raghavendra Tirtha, or if you were Jayatirtha or Vyasa Tirtha, how would you look at this verse? For us, it feels like you throw stuff, you will get children, you will get cows, and you will get fame. You become very famous because you have done a big yagna. Everybody will talk how wealthy this man is, and he did such a big yagna, and he donated so much cows and so many cows, and he fed so many thousand people, and he becomes famous. No, that is not the meaning there. It is only our ignorance. Praja there means pragne. Pragne means knowledge. Nya means knowledge. Pra means prakrishta knowledge. Prakrishta is the highest knowledge. Highest knowledge is what? Highest knowledge of Brahman. Prajaya. Pashubihi. Pashu. Pa plus shu. Pa, panti, protect. Shu. Shu comes from sha. Sha means sham. Sham means ananda. What gives ananda? The knowledge that we acquire from the Vedas gives us eventually ananda because it takes us to liberation. So Pashu actually means Vedas, not the cows. And here is a beautiful etymology there. In the Vedic Sanskrit, Gauhu is also called Veda. Gau is also called Vedas. Cows symbolize Veda and Gauhu is Veda. Why do you think Krishna was loitering around looking after the cows? Not because he was a cowherd and he liked it. That is a superficial sense. The deeper sense is Vedaishta sarvair ahameva vedyaha vedanta krit vedavid evecha aham. I protect the Vedas. I look after the Vedas. So when you look at the cow as a cowherd, let us not consider Krishna as just a pure cowherd. No, that cow there stands for Gauhu, stands for the Vedas. Okay. So Pashu means Vedas. So what this Yajamana, what is this priest saying is this Yajamana who has done this sacrifice Please give him prajne. Please give him knowledge. How? Through the Vedas. And what do the Vedas do? Yashas. Yashas means not fame. Ya plus sha. Ya means yam. Sha means sham. Yam means knowledge. Sham means ananda. Jnanananda. Give him jnanananda. Give him his liberation. Our bliss and knowledge is our liberation, right? So that is what this verse is saying. Prajaya Pashubir Yashasa. Look at Yajamana, he who does Yagna. Yagna has got so many meanings, right? I just wanted to put this here because this Upanishad is talking about Yagna Namaka Paramatma. Yeah. So this Yajamana is worshipping this Yagna Namaka Paramatma, and he is getting the knowledge of that Yagna Namaka Paramatma through the Pashus. And when he does that, he gets Yashas. Okay. That is what that verse means. So I hope I was able to demonstrate to you the beauty of how to go deep in Vedas rather than sticking to some ritualism, which in my view has to be absolutely shunned. Yeah, ritualism should be shunned unless it is done with background knowledge of what is going on. Okay. Can I call one of you to recite chapter 2, 42 to 45, which deals with this as to how should Vedas to be considered as Paravidya, yeah, and not as Aparavidya. Jagadish ji, please go for it.
Yami mam pushpitam vacham pravadantya vipashchitaha vedavadaratav partha nanyadastiti vadinaha kamatmanasvarga paraha janma karma phalapradam kriya vishesha bahulam bhogaishvarya gatim prati bhogaishvarya prasaktanam taya pahrta chetasam व्यवसायात्मिका बुद्धिः समाधौ न विधीयते त्रैगुण्य विषया वेदाः निस्त्रैगुण्यो भवार्जुन निर्द्वन्द्वो नित्यसत्वस्थः निर्योगक्षेम आत्मवान्.
Beautifully recited, Junior Jagdish. Well done. Very, very beautifully recited. So that is exactly what Krishna is telling us in the second chapter. After he has finished Sankhya, he is going to go to yoga. And it is in that transition that Krishna is putting these verses. Watch this. Again, Prakarana of chapter 2 becomes important there. And before he talks about yoga, he's telling how to approach the Vedas as Paravidya and Aparavidya. Okay, we have done this in Katha Upanishad. Chaya tapo brahmavido vadanti pranchagnayo yecha trinachiketaha. Lokadi magnim tamuvacha tasmai ya ishtakaha yavatirva yatava trinachiketaha triviretya sandrim trikarmakrit tarati janma mrutyuhu. Yeah, trinachiketas prayameva viditya ya evam vidvan chinute nachiketam. So this whole fire sacrifice, these rituals, which are all such an aparavidya when we do it blindly. But when we do it the way Yama has taught Nachiketa, what is that Trinachiketa, what is that what is that Trikarma Krit and all that? We have looked at that, right? Kunda, Pinda and Kala. This Kunda, this pit, which has got the bricks, essentially signifies 360 bricks. The 360 bricks denotes 360 ribs. Yeah, that is what we look at, 360. 360 also means Purna. It talks about the ribs. It talks about the 360 days. What do you do for 360 days? Trikarmakrit, Yagna, Dana, and Tapas as a surrender to Paramatma. So it is not just sitting around the fire pit and throwing stuff in, but actually to look at the deeper philosophy there, then it becomes Paravidya. So this is how I have learned from my acharyas. So both Aparavidya and Paravidya are actually required. Yeah, both of them are essential. And I'll tell you why. Because this is like a paracetamol syrup, right? And if you want to give paracetamol syrup to a kid, it's got strawberry flavor. And then it has actually got the paracetamol. If you taste paracetamol, it is really bitter. Whereas when you have the strawberry flavor, it is palatable. That exactly is Aparavidya. It is like this strawberry flavor. But underneath this is this paracetamol, which is actually helpful to us. And that is what Acharya says in Dwadasha Stotra, and I come back to it again and again because it's full of philosophy. Bahuchitra Jagat, Bahuda Karanat, Parashaktihi Ananta Gunaha Paramaha. If we just stop at Bahuchitra Jagat, oh, this beautiful world, it's so intricate, oh, I need to do this various quantum mechanics and stuff and understand what is happening in this universe, it is so beautiful. If you stop there, that is Paravidya. But what should happen is that Paravidya should eventually take us to the view that we understand that Bahuda Karanat Parashaktihi Ananta Gunaha Paramaha. This world is so intricate. So how beautiful the creator should be. That is where we should move. That is the Paravidya. So we should have both Aparavidya and Paravidya, but Aparavidya should be in the right perspective. So this is a summary slide. Andantamaha pravishanti ye avidyayam upasate tato bhuya ivate tamo yavu vidyayam rataha. Blind faith, blind followers of dogmas, lack of deeper contemplation. Followers of ignorance, prayers, the one that, the ones that keep knowledge to themselves and do not teach or pass this on to others. The ones that have knowledge but do not censure those that have wrong knowledge. Okay. And there is another view, the ones that accept apara and reject para, or the ones that reject apara and accept para. No, you need to accept both apara and para and then understand the apara in the right perspective. So we need deep contemplation of the truth. Learn and distribute the knowledge like how we do in these satsangs. The knowledgeable, it is their sacred duty to correct those that have incorrect views or have ignorance. And realize that both Paratattva and Aparatattva are both essential. Okay? When we do that, we get our proper benefits. So the benefits of knowing what is false knowledge and benefit of knowing what is true knowledge are different, which is what our friend Svayambu or Manu is going to be talking next. I thought I'll do this verse, but I'm going to move to the next slide next week to talk about this. We can combine it with a few other verses. Anyadeva ahur vidyaya, anyadeva ahur avidyaya, iti shushrumadhiranam yenastad vichachakshire. That is what he says. Why should we know this Paravidya and Aparavidya? Because the benefits of knowing what is Paravidya and the benefits of knowing what is Aparavidya are there. Because there are benefits, we should know this. What are those benefits and so on? We'll deal with this in the next class. And I just want to put this very briefly because Pragneshji was supposed to join us today, but he sent me a message that he was very busy fundraising for a charity in Aberdeen in Scotland for his local Hindu temple. And this forum is very good at this. Yagna dana tapaha karma natyajam karyameva tatu. Okay, so our Pragneshji is really following this, where he is doing the dana where it is required to the right people at the right time. This is what Sureshji was talking about last week. So I just wanted to put this slide and appreciate and thank Pragneshji for the wonderful work that he is doing in Scotland this afternoon, and he was not able to join us today. I probably will go and make some dokla today evening. They do look delicious. So on that note, Krishna Pranamastu, and we will close today's talk. Any questions we'll take up for the Q&A. Devalji, is it a historical hand raise? No.
No. So there is a question.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to gather my thoughts. So the Vedas give, so according to what you say, the Vedas give contradictory ideas about the knowledge in the Veda, is what I'm hearing today. So you have said, you have used words like, Krishna has used words like guhyatam, and that it should be a sacred and a secret knowledge, and it isn't for the man in the street. But what you are telling today is slightly opposite of what you have been saying before. And I'm a bit uncomfortable if we are the ones who are making the judgment.
Yeah. Okay, Devalji, very, very nice questions, very important questions. So the second one, is very important. First one I've actually forgotten already, so I want you to remind me. I'll pick up the first one. Yes, you're right. Iti guhyatamam shastram idamuktam maya anaha. Etad bhutva buddhiman kritakrityascha bharata. Chapter 15. Guhyatama. It's a secret knowledge. It is a sacred knowledge. But Devalji, here is where the twist is. Yes, we should censure long knowledge, but you should also distribute the right knowledge to whom? To the deserving. So that is the extra corollary that needs to be added there. Yes, this Shastra is not for somebody who is on the street. It is somebody who has completely shunned God. He is a Tamo Yogin. That fellow, there is no hope for him. But there are some Sattvika Jivas who, because of their ignorance, they are following something else. So this is where Svayambu or Manu is coming. Svayambu or Manu's teaching Deval is purely directed at the deserving souls. It is not the ones that are it is not for Duryodhana. It is only for Arjuna. Yeah, it is only for the deserving souls where this is happening. Okay, so I hope that answers your question as to how you recalibrate that. And the first question, I remembered your answer. So, Deval, this is the primary dictum of authoritativeness of Veda. Why do we say Vedas are authoritative? It is Apaurusheya. Yeah. It is Anadinitya. It is Swataha Pramanya. So the third one, there are three criteria to say why Veda is a supreme source of authority. In that, Swataha Pramanya is a very, very important. In the sense, Vedas are always saying the truth, Deval. It is only us. Vedas are not giving contradictory views. Yeah. So I would request you to think about that point. Vedas are not doing contradictory views. It is only us. It is our problem. So the beauty of the Vedas is it is all there, available. What the souls do is based on their swabhava. They look at it differently. That is the greatness of God. I told you, right? This is the samsara is like a classroom. And this is an exam, and we are all writing our exams, and there are all these questions, and we have to write those exams and pass and get either 100 marks or 0 marks. The questions are all the same. The syllabus is still the same. It is not the problem with the syllabus, which is the Vedas. The syllabus is the same. It is only how we understand it and how we write the exam paper that we get the marks. So Vedas are definitely not saying contradictory things. And that is what Veda Vyasa has established when he said Gati Samanya. Everywhere it is saying the same thing. It is only our problem. Neetaji and Sushru.
Sorry, can I just come in before Neeta asks her question?
Yeah.
But the importance of this knowledge requires a guru who is also in the material world. So there is, okay, different gradations of limitations, and they are, they have lots and lots of knowledge. So what I'm uncomfortable with is the syllabus is the same, but the teacher is giving different or differentiation to and I can understand that the pupil's ability is different. But what I'm not understanding is why is there a differentiation in the way you give knowledge is all I was trying to point out.
So I think the key answer to that is, and that is why all our acharyas have always taken prasthana trayas. Yeah, Gita Prasthana, Sutra Prasthana, and Upanishad Prasthana to come up with their philosophies. And we have also said primarily Hindu scriptures is only 7. 4 Vedas, Itihasa, Purana, Pancharatragama. 4 primary Hindus, 7 primary Hindu scriptures, and Puranas and so on that are ancillary that concur with the 7, they form the Hindu scriptures. So our scriptures, what we need to look at is very, very clear. So if somebody says something on stage, I would first ask, is this coming in the Prasthana Traya? Is it there in the Upanishad? Is it there in the Gita? Is it there in the Sutra? Has Veda Vyasa dealt with it? If it is not, reject. Okay, there is the algorithm, at least from my perspective, that it has to be in the 3 Prasthana Trayas. Then the next, you are asking a very important question. Who is a guru? How do you test the validity of the guru? Yeah. So that is why it becomes very important. The primary guru for Vedanta is Vedavyasa. Okay. If you follow what Vedavyasa is teaching us, you will never fall, because even the optatva, so optatva is the concept of how do you understand the validity or the authoritativeness of a guru who is coming up with a philosophical idea, and that has been resolved about who is a apta, who is a valid guru. He is a guru who is sarvajna, who doesn't tell lies, who doesn't deceive, and he is a karana patava. His eyes, nose, everything else is right. And there are all those criteria you can study in Shastras. So it is up to us to assess who is a good guru. Okay. Here at this point, I just want to remind you about practically how do we assess whether a guru is a fellow who is actually worthy of teaching us something. How do you assess them? It happened in Shatprashna Upanishad. Okay. When these rishis, the 6 rishis went to Pippalada and said, can you teach us about Brahman? Pippalada said, you know what, I'm going to ask you to test me. Hang around here for about a year. Okay. I know only something about Brahman. And I know you guys have questions about Brahman. But why don't you first test me out? See whether I'm worthy of being a guru. Okay. So that is what Pippalada did. And these rishis were, the 6 rishis were hanging around for about a year. And they were doing their own studies at that point. But they were also checking out whether this fellow is really worthy of being a guru. Okay. So that also, those kind of stories, those kind of incidents are also described in the Upanishad. So what I'm trying to tell you here is, we have to assess our gurus, whether they are worthy. The modern ones, I shun them. Yeah, I don't accept any of the modern ones. They are all out there with a business mentality. I'm sorry to say that. I would only go for our primary original gurus, whoever they are, from the earlier centuries. Yeah, not the current ones. So that would be my criteria. But you're asking a very, very pertinent and an important question as to how do we assess this? That is our journey. Yeah. And in fact, in Sadhana Adhyaya of Brahma Sutra, there is one section that is devoted to this, about how to find a guru and how to assess him and how to swap gurus. Everything is discussed by none other than Vedavyasa himself. Yeah. So check that out. I hope that answers your question, but very, very important questions though. Nita Sushru.
Thanks, Madhu. So just carrying on, like, how do you then assess whether it is worth censuring someone who is producing a contrary argument, or you say that is his swabhava, let him be, let him do what he wants to do. It's not worth engaging in any conversation with this person. How do we judge that?
Okay.
Or are we going to be held at fault for not censuring that person?
Yeah. So again, practically, how do you go about doing that? I can see the problem, Sushrut, in the modern times. Modern times, there is a problem there. Yeah, I can see that. Whereas in the ancient times, this was not an issue. Nobody took arms to kill each other. People used to sit around and debate, do polemics, and then mutually have these debates. There are again rules of debates, right? Vada, Vitanda, and all those. There used to be rules of debates. And then, if some fellow comes with a different view, you censure them and say, this is my Siddhanta, and he censures and so on. But when you do this process, this is what is manana all about. The whole idea there is to allow you to do manana. So I think we should do that. If somebody says something, well, if you watch on TV, you can't censure them, of course. Censure in the sense not putting them down. Yeah, when I say censure, we need to be very careful with regards to what that means. Censure means not belittling somebody or hurting them, but censuring to say why that particular concept may not be the right concept. So that is what censuring there means. And that is the vada, right? Katha lakshana. When Acharya writes Katha lakshana, he will talk about what is vada, what is jalpa, what is vitanda, what are the rules in which you do this, what are the various types of debates, abhyubhagama vada, all those things that you use, and have that censuring in a framework. Yeah, that is what I think we should do. Do things in a framework, not belittling or hurting them or physically or mentally, but actually have that honest discussion. That is what Shastra Abhyasa is. That is what polemics in Katha Lakshana is. That is how my understanding, Sushrit. So I hope that answers your question.
Thanks.
Right. If there are no further questions, it was a wonderful discussion. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So what we will do is we'll carry on with Isha Upanishad for the next 4 weeks. And from July, I'm traveling abroad for 2 to 3 weeks. Suresh ji is going to do chapter 16 on the 16th of July. So what I'm hoping is over the next 4 sessions, we will actually be able to complete Isha Upanishad, or at least do some justice of understanding Isha Upanishad. Okay. So on that note, Krishna Pranamastu. Suresh ji, do you want to take us through Om, please? Hare Krishna, everyone. Take care. See you next week.
So, Guru, thank you.